really irritated because I'm getting partaken, right?
So we want to remember Jeremy, his family, and your prayers. Jeremy's uncle passed, and he said there, the wake is going to be Saturday. So I guess he's with the family planning that. So we've got that. He didn't say what the cause was or anything. Jeremy, our only guy. Yeah, our only guy. And then Kiara has been exposed to COVID. So we're just gotta, babysitter actually. So we gotta pray for that too. But anyway, so I'm doing it on Zoom. I'm gonna record it, and if either one, well, I think Kiara is gonna join online in a minute here, but I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. In fact, would anybody mind leading us in prayer for those two? All right. All right, let's pray.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day. We thank you for all the blessings and everything that you've given us. Lord, we're standing in a need of prayer. Bless both these families. Bless Jeremy's family who's dealing with death. Death and grief can be hard for us when it's our loved ones. So give them the understanding and the strength to be able to do what they need in your name. Heavenly Father, we bless the lady who's been exposed to COVID. May you be there, in there, everything with them, and be able to do what you need to do. We're thankful for everything that you've done. We thank you for everything that you're going to do in our lives. Heavenly Father, you are the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. And without you, nothing can happen. Everything is possible with you. It is in your wonderful name that we say amen.
Amen. Okay. And so if you're watching this, I'm not sharing my screen because I've got to use the other computer to use the overhead. So, but the PowerPoint is loaded up on Moodle. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so jumping right into TRIP chapters 3 and 4, Godward orientation. And of course, we know the verse, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now, one of the assertions that TRIP makes is that children will worship something. This is true for adults too. So we want to direct them to be God-oriented, self-aware, because if we're not self-aware, then we don't know that we're being led into idolatry. We're unaware until we're right in the middle of it. So this is another reason. And so also with God, we have freedom. With idolatry, we are hostages. So we orient children to the truth. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever done the Experiencing God Bible study, but one of the things that the writer Henry Blackaby says is truth is a person. He's not an idea. He's not a concept. He is a person. He is the way, the truth, and the life. So when we raise a child's awareness of his presence, he's with us at all times. We get oriented to his nature through his word, through our worship, with our families, and helping them to understand who he is and what he is. Those are essential in this internalization of the gospel that Tripp talks about. Okay, now, so with idolatry, we have a choice. We can worship the creator or we can worship creation, and that can come in any form. And it comes in a lot of good things too. You know, some people say, well, you know, I've got this ministry and I am working in this mission, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And, you know, sometimes you have to stop and say, were you called to that? Are you doing things to be busy for God and not knowing God? Right? So knowing that we were created for eternity, we are created with a hunger, a desire for God. And that's the verse that says he has set eternity in our hearts. We are actually, again, created for God and one another. So choosing anything other than them may result in a temporary satiation of our hunger, but it's unfulfilling. So remember the woman at the well. She had to schlep all the way out to the well in the middle of the day in the heat. And Jesus offered her living water that would quench her thirst forever. So when we choose the creation, we're never fulfilled. We never experience being filled. There might be a temporary filling or a relief of that, of desire, or a distraction from that. But ultimately, he is the one who satisfies. So, and I don't know if any of you all have done any study in addiction. I think maybe some of y'all have had that addictions course. I remember a person with an addiction was interviewed, and what he talked about was the first time he did heroin. And it was, like a pinnacle experience. Did you see that video? Yeah.
He was always trying to chase that
Mhm.
first one.
So from that point on, it's like, see, the enemy will rob you. So that first high is just indescribable. It's, and so then from that on, you build the resistance, and you have to have more and more, and you try to capture that same high. And that's kind of the way that the enemy is. He leads us, and you have a little bit of a hunger, a little desire, you get off the rails. So we must introduce children to the Creator, because our sin nature is built in, it's innate. Okay, we're going to be reading a lot of verses, so draw your swords, as they used to say back in the day. Yeah, get your Bibles open, your Bible app. Somebody read Psalm 51, verse 5. I can teach you all day, but this is the best. This is the best way to learn. 51 verse 5. Yes.
It says, behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me.
Mm-hmm. So, and we're not going to get into some sort of a, theological discussion on original sin and all of that sort of thing. But we're born with it. It's there. It came from the fall, and we are all subject to it. So, all right. Now, who's next? Somebody look up Proverbs 22, verse 15.
There's a youngster's heart is filled with foolishness, but physical discipline will drive it far away.
Okay. Yeah. And anybody have another version that you got pulled up?
I've got folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far away.
A rod of discipline. Okay. So now here's this little guy. Guess what? Yeah. And this is the precursor to the spanking discussion. So other trends, I have an issue with the word folly because of some of the meaning it might have to different people. Other translations call it foolishness, doing wrong, or rebellion. So what I want you to know is kids are going to be foolish, but in a good way. And so, if we obviously play and silliness is not the foolishness that we're talking about here, but be careful with your words and know this is not what the scripture is talking about. So a goofy play from a child can really wear on you, especially the screaming, just for the fun of it. I studied music for quite a while, and I taught kids music some too. And it's called vocal exploration. Well, you remember the still face video, the little girl went, ee. Yeah, that one, it's like an ice pick. But find a way to give them space elsewhere if they're in that repeated mode. Repetition is what's happening with the brain when we repeat something. Read me the same story, read me the story, read me the story. This brain is forming neural pathways. And that's what the repetition's about. They're actually internalizing it. They love the story, they love your voice, and they're building neural pathways in that. So, if there's a lot of that repetition, okay, honey, go jump in your room. You've got to do the self-care or you will break, right? That's part of it too. This is part of this parent-child thing. So now if they're doing something, you can redirect, but don't think of this as being bad behavior. Now, here's the one Daddy, watch me. Mommy, look what I can do. There's several things going on in the brain in that. One of them is, the biggest thing is connection. You know, are you there? You know, will you respond to me? That's the attachment connection that we're talking about. By the way, adults do this too. Hey, have you read such and such? Right. That's a reject. And that actually is part of what we'll talk about later with the neurological stuff, with the neuropsychology stuff. Yes.
Before, I didn't want you to skip slides before I have. So obviously I've got younger kids, but
Mhm.
we've been trying to teach them about interrupting and respecting manners.
Yes.
And also, so from situations like that, one thing, I don't know, I've been trying to say, I want to hear you count to 5, and I'll be done with my sentence and then we can go. Is that bad or?
No, I think,
Okay.
no, I
Otherwise,
think
I don't wanna
that's,
be putting her-
hey, Kiara, hope you're okay. We prayed for you.
Yeah, I didn't want to be misdirecting her, like, you know, her
Right.
away from
Right.
what she wants to learn, but I also want to make sure she's learning about respecting situations.
Well,
when she has opportunity.
Yeah, I think what that is about impulse control. And giving them a space to go, okay, all right, somebody's talking. Now, if you're talking to them and they're interrupting,
Yeah.
you're going, okay, let's take turns here. I mean, there are ways to do that. Okay, my turn, you know, and you know, you can do, you know, physical discipline doesn't have to be striking either. You can put your hand on their shoulder, and that'll be that gets their attention too. Now, this is me 30 years later wishing I had a do-over. So just say, oh, I'm not the expert. I know from failure. So yeah. So this is me. If I had it to do over again, if I was younger, I probably could do better. But you know what you know now. That's why God originally set up the family with generations. You know, I don't think the nuclear family is quite what he had in mind, because we get so separated. And so we're supposed to be families within a community. And, you know, this age separation stuff in the school system. And, you know, I get that. I get the reasons for that as far as, you know, developmental stages and that sort of thing. But we need to also expose kids to all ages, you know. Okay, so when you've got them in a moment like that, make it a priority. Or if the timing's not right, have a right brain, left brain conversation. You're really excited right now and you want my attention. You want me to be with you. But this might burn on the stove here if I step away. Can we do this in a little bit, right? And right. So, and that's something that takes practice, a lot of practice. Okay, child, let's talk foolishness. This is one of my favorites.
Which slide are we on?
Hang on.
Okay.
7.
Let it go. No school. This would be day 3. School's still out. Right. All that frozen. Elsa. What's the snowman name? Olaf. And what's the sister name? That froze everybody up from the beginning. Elsa, what's the other name? Anna. If I ever could show some cartoon characters. Right. Crystal, all them. I do.
So I love that one. I love that. Because they had snow days. This was before NTI. So yeah. Is it? But now what do you got? You got a kid repeating. And that's normal kid brain stuff. That's normal things that they do. So yeah, I so get where she's going. You know, so we are now on slide 7. The heart is not neutral, but yeah, just now this mom, she's reaching out to the community. She's online saying, help me. You know, and of course the girl at the end, literal thinkers, don't kill Elsa. Well, Elsa's not real, but that's, you know, okay, honey, I'm not gonna kill, but I really want to. Yeah, I of course my boys, it was you know, the Lion King and Jungle Book. I could do the, you know, don't pick the paw with the paw, you know, and I had the whole song, right? Yeah. So yeah. So yeah, you get those. No. Is it? Oh, I haven't seen that one, but we did see. Oh, Encanto. Yeah, we saw that. Right. You don't talk about Bruno. Some good family systems learning in that, right? That's kind of a good one for that. But yeah, no. I love that. Yeah, the little kid stuff.
From his Asian, African American, one of them has autism.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's all I hear is bubble.
Oh yeah. Was line up, everybody line up. Yeah, I know that one too.
It's time for lunch.
Time for lunch. Yeah, okay, so. Okay, I need somebody else with their Bible. Who's got it? You got your, okay, turn to Deuteronomy, chapter 11. And I want you to read a pretty good section here. Deuteronomy 11:16 through 21.
Take heed to yourselves, that your heart be not deceived, and ye turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. And then the Lord's wrath be kindled against you, and he shut up the heaven, that there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, and lest ye perish quickly from off the good land which the Lord giveth you. Therefore shall ye lay up these words in your heart and in your soul, and bind them for a sign upon your hand, that they may be as frontlets between your eyes. And ye shall teach them your children, speaking of them, when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt write them upon the doorpost of thine house, and upon thy gates, that your days may be multiplied, and the days of your children in the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers to give them, as the days of heaven upon the earth.
There you go. So when does it say to talk about God?
All the time.
When you lie down, when you rise up, when you go out, when you come in. It's a lifestyle. It's not a Sunday morning, you know, go and then forget. Okay, so this is how, you know, think about the determinism concept that Tripp talks about if I just make the right conditions and get them to the right school and in the right activities, you know, and if I take them to church, no, that's not how it works. Those are all necessary, but the biggest influence is going to be you with your children or grandbabies. So Now, your faith experiences aren't the ones that your child is going to have. And that's kind of like we go, oh, I want you to sing some of those old timey hymns. And we're like, this is, yeah, listen, the hymnal, oh my goodness. Those aren't around anymore, are they?
Yeah.
They are. Yeah, yeah. And those are, of course, I took music at Southern Seminary, and those were like the bedrocks of the faith. There's a whole lot of good theology in there. There's a whole lot of celebration and worship. But that, you know, it's, yeah, you got to put some life in it. So don't expect them to love the songs that you loved. Help them explore and find their own things. Help them experience God for themselves. So, you know, now you can share stories about you and God. Those are kind of part of the things that we do as we get up and we lie down, as we come and go. But know that God is going to do a fresh new thing in them. And he is going to do it his own way, and he's going to relate to them in a very specifically designed way for them. So, you know, help them be excited about discovering that. And when they're little, you ask them about times that God may have helped them. Why do you think that, you know, you won't hurt any worse than that when you fell off your bike? Now, we also got to be careful not to, you know, because children have the miraculous thinking, you know. Well, a minute ago, this little girl was saying, don't kill Elsa. You know, Elsa's not real. But you know, kind of point those out. And I wonder if, you know, make them wonder, help them be curious, want to discover. I wonder if God was helping there. I wonder about that. Because they're going to come back with hard questions. Well, why didn't God help this person? You got to be going, I don't know. But you got to be grounded in the word yourself. Worship, demonstrate worship, help them understand that our souls are meant for that too. So, and the quote here from Tripp, part of the parent's task is to shepherd him as a creature who worships, pointing him to the one who alone is worthy of his worship. Help them compare. What do you think about Superman? Well, what about God? Well, Superman's not real, first of all, but God made everything. No, I mean, just conversation starters. Speak their own language. Okay, next slide. So when a child's enamored with a toy, a TV show, a friend, they want to be with them all the time, point out to them that all good gifts come from God. And so we can redirect them to worship the Creator because of his creation, right? That beautiful flower, God made that. You know, God didn't have to do that. He just did that because he loves us. So moving on. What we have to do, and these are the shaping influences that Tripp talks about. First and foremost, stability and security in the home. Kids need to know what to expect. You know, having some surprises is a good thing, but we can't live in chaos. So, and that's part of it too, isn't where you may have to say if somebody works a swing shift, you may have to do different things, different days, but that's where you talk to them and say, okay, remember, this is the day that, you know, that daddy works night and he won't do that next week. And this is why we have to be a little quiet this morning. Explain to them why, because they want to know why. Now, they may not be able to fully comprehend because their bodies want to do something, you know, bodies want to move. The brain development, there's actually research that shows that jumping helps the developing brain in the child. Now, obviously, we're not talking about, you know, concussions or anything, but jumping and moving is actually a part of their brain connecting to their body. They are actually learning. It's called kinesthetic learning, body learning. Did you know there are geniuses in kinesthetic? Athletes and dancers and, you know, so that's a part of their development as well. Okay. Making sure that the relationships that relationships with the child within the household are reflecting God's grace and mercy. Age appropriate discipline and reflect God's view of sin. So let's talk about that a little bit. You've got a situation where maybe your child does something mean to their sibling or, you know, out of their own anger. What do we do with that? God's watching you. What have you said to your kids?
I know.
God's watching you.
Yeah.
This time, he's watching you. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah. That kind of rubbed me some kind of way
Sure.
when I read that part where he was talking about when he spanked
Yes.
and then said, God basically has me, and I'm not
Yeah.
against spanking, but I don't
Yeah.
think that was appropriate thing. Cause then, don't you think that's like
Mhm.
imparting some kind of something in him concerning a whooping in God, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
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 This is,
right.
yeah, this is one of those places where we do, you know, where I am at odds with that. To me, it almost sounds like announcing abuse. Or something.
Yes.
You know, now, if let's take a couple of examples. So like we talked about last week, the consequence, you want that to be related to the action. And so, you know, like I said, crayons on the wall, that kind of thing. Pouring out the dirt from the plant, the CD collection, right? Making it related to what they did. And what you said was beautiful. As long as you weren't, you know, you actually took the hand and did that. Now, if you snatched their hand and, right, but you weren't, you were like, okay, you're going to do the work. Here we go. This is it. And you're holding them. And that's, you know, that's a different thing. But yeah, the time that I would spank like that would be after I snatch them from running out in the road and get myself calmed down and then get them calmed down. And then I would say, we're going to spank you and here's why. Because you could die. No. But you know, you tell them this is very scary and you know, that you could really be hurt bad or somebody else could be hurt. And yeah, so that is the exception that I would use. Because what do you do with the consequence? What kind of consequence goes with that? That's how serious. And so it, you know, to get to the point of spanking, that's probably the only way. That's really the only way. Now, did I do that? Is that the only time I did that with my boys? No, there were a couple times that, you know, they were fighting each other. You know, yeah, that was before the youngest started taking jujitsu. That was, yeah. Yeah, yeah, you know, and you've got to say, okay, this is dangerous. You're going to break something. If they break something, give them a job and make them pay for it. But yeah, for me, that's really the only time I would do spanking. When they were little, they'd come in the kitchen and if they reached for the stove, I think I told you all this one, to smack the hands, because I don't want to burn blister on my child. Yes, they would learn from that, but I'm not going to let them get blister on the hand. And somehow we managed and they knew not to come in. I didn't have to put up a baby gate or anything like that. Mom's cooking, stay out there. So yeah, and that's, you know, that's where the consistency has to come in. That's where, you know, every time we're at the stove, you can't come here. You can't come here. You can't come here. If you come, you're gonna have to go sit down or whatever. Now, in that case, I might have slapped their hands
Yeah.
because it was a safety thing, right? So, yeah, and I do think that's kind of weird, the whole spanking thing. You know what we're gonna have to do? You know, and I'm picturing, you know, we're going to the dungeon, you know?
But you know, some religions use that
Mhm.
and
It is, yeah, yeah.
and then you
Mhm.
justify it with God said. And no.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah.
Well, you got to keep your brain in the game too. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I also feel like, not everyone, but like, people who are big proponents are
Mhm.
the people that shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah,
Because it's like, they're proud of it, like, oh yeah, I'm hurting my kids, so they won't grow up soft.
right. And that's the authoritarian, right? Do as I say or you're gonna pay,
Yeah.
right? And why is the consequence thing? Well, it's harder. It takes thought, it takes planning. The consequences, the kids need to know ahead of, it means you've got to be disciplined yourself, right?
Referring to like with parents, whooping
Mhm.
are used as a control factor.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to control. If
Right.
the first instinct is, I'm here to beat your butt.
Mhm.
You know, and to me, a parent needs to be able to take that time to go in your room, you need 10 minutes.
Exactly.
You have to be able to focus on
Yes,
that.
yes.
And if you don't, you just acting out of your own frustration.
Mhm. Right.
And we talked about
Right.
that in your book, you know,
Mhm.
if you do discipline, make sure
Right.
it's in the right order, not
Mhm.
out of your own frustration.
Yeah.
And most of the time, like she said, it's their life.
Yeah.
If you can, I don't know, what we do sometimes, if both, my husband and I are there, and it was my judgment, he has to spank. That way, none of my anger comes
That's
out
good.
in the severity
Uh-huh.
of that. Our kids are crazy.
Your kids are what?
Crazy.
No,
They
they're
can
not.
round from.
They're regular kids. They're regular kids.
But that helps us to know.
Yeah, I
Overdue.
yeah. And if, you know, in a case like that with safety or with, if there is no other, there's, the timeout thing. Okay, that can be more torture than anything to a child. And, you know, and there are some kids, I know I've heard parents say, well, I could beat them from, you know, morning to noon and they would just laugh. Then it's not, that doesn't do it for them or the personality. And the timeout thing. There's a type of therapy I'm going through the modules training on it called parent-child intervention training. And they use the timeout. I think that it's age, you know, the time is based on the age. It's like 1 minute for a 1-year-old, 2 minutes for 2. And what they do with that is if you continue, you know, the time starts over. Oh,
Yeah.
now who's doing the most work there? Parent is, right? Because you're staying on it. And meanwhile, you're saying, okay, you know, and you're not saying, yeah, you're not yelling at them, you're saying, okay, but this was a choice you made. And, you know, they may be screaming, whatever. I know you're upset. You know, I know this is, you know, this is disappointing to you, whatever. And we just do some of the dialogue that the other book talks about. So yeah, it's, I did find that a kind of disturbing. Now, son, we're gonna, you know, we're going upstairs and we're gonna, I'm like, oh, it's just creepy.
Yeah, and they're gonna associate all those things with that whole experience.
Yeah.
There.
And I love how he pats himself on the back and everything. My kids are great. Oh yeah, I have struggles. See, this is something you learn is, especially as a therapist, you get something called lip service. Oh yeah, I believe in God. Oh yeah, I encourage my wife. Oh yeah. And then you start asking questions. Okay, tell me more about that. This is one I love. I'm bipolar. Okay, tell me where, did I say this before? Okay, I'm bipolar. Well, okay, so where were you diagnosed? Well, I've been on the internet. Okay, well, no, you're not bipolar. Do you know what a manic phase is? Let's talk about that. I have had to, when people say, oh, I'm not depressed, pull the diagnostic manual off, slap it over, and I go, okay, so you need to have 5 of these, not, you know, I think with depression, it's probably like 4 of 7, something like that. Anyway, and I start reading them off, and I'm like, yeah, okay. You only needed 4 of these, and you got 6. And they're like, I guess I am depressed. Yeah, you are. So anyway, back to, yeah, see, you can sidetrack me easily. I sidetrack myself
You're learning
easily.
a lot from-
Yeah,
And I'm glad I'm not the only one who, I was like, maybe I'm wrong, but it.
no, yeah, and you know, I really need to talk to the person that teaches this on the main campus and ask them, how do you handle this chapter? You know, because I'm just gonna say, no, that's kind of creepy. I guess you had to be there, but I don't see it now. Like you know, in the case, let's say Joy over here, she and her husband are going, okay, this is you know, and so Dad takes them. Did he say, okay, you know what you did? This is what this is. Okay, see, you know.
And usually, I mean, if he listens to the whole story, then so he'll get from beginning to end
Oh,
of the, you know, child.
okay.
How we got up. to
Whichever
this.
one it was, how we got here.
Who stabbed each other with the fork? That kind of thing,
Because
right?
sometimes my version- I would tell him, I said, you know, I'll tell him my version, this is what they've done all day, this is how we got here, but that's just my side.
Right.
So, the
Mhm.
elevated, I'm sure, back there.
Yeah.
We started.
Yeah.
Okay, so age appropriate discipline. You know, a toddler reaching for the hot stove, I'm gonna pop the hands. Biting, pop the mouth. I do that. I did that when my boys tried that. That's you know, that one, yeah. Biting, no, this is no game. And they look at you like, whoa, yeah, whoa. That's what that is. So yes, I did pop their mouths when they bite.
I beat my kids back.
Oh,
But they did it, I promise, both of them, my oldest daughter did it in daycare. And I bit her back. And my son did it, but they didn't do it no more.
yeah, but
And I know, I'm sure
Right.
that's not.
oh, are we?
I'm
Was
sure.
that a behavior change or a heart change? I'm just saying.
I think that's a weird right there.
Oh my. Yeah, no, yeah, okay. We're kind of getting lost here. Okay, so,
Right, I'm sorry.
when we're making these decisions, we want to instill spiritually informed values. What I'm doing here, is this going to build something kingdom-wise? Or is this just going to solve a problem for me? What's happening here? And am I helping them become a success by worldly values or kingdom values? That's really, now, let's see. There was, if you read this one, Sneaky Al, the kid who snuck around and lied and did stuff behind everybody's back. You know, we have to help them know that sin is a constant, but not to the point where, well, what's the point? I might as well give up. You know, everybody's going to sin and it keeps happening, you know. So what do you do with that? Well, you say, we can't do it by ourselves. We need Jesus. We need him. And it's not good. And anything you do, when you heard somebody, you know, use an analogy from their lives. Do you remember when your friend said something that hurt your feelings? That really bothered you, didn't it? Yeah, it really bothered me. Well, that was a sin. That was his sin. Do you still want to be friends with them? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, well, that's kind of how it is with God. It hurts us, it hurts the people around us, and God is sad for us. We don't make God sad because he knows what we're going to do before we do it. And he doesn't need us. That's a big concept to teach kids too. You know what? God made us. He didn't really need us because he created the whole universe. He just made us because he wants us. He wants us. That's how much love, he had so much love spilling over that he made us. And that's why we're here. So, yeah. So, when they say, well, I can't stop sinning. Well, you need help, but that's not a get out of jail free card. So, and there's the consistency, somebody lies. Okay. And also think about this too, is why do people lie? Generally, why do people, if they're not mentally ill or, why do people lie? Yeah. Usually though, they're afraid of something. If I tell the truth, something's going to happen. Well, you've got to let your child know that, we don't need to be brutally honest and say, you're ugly, but we do need to help them to say, we've got to tell the truth. And when we don't, it gets between us and our friends and our family and and God. And God can't be in the same place that sin is. You can use the old light in the darkness kind of thing. I did this with Sunday school kids. They loved it. Turn off the lights, close the door, have the blinds on. Okay. Where's the light? Well, there's no light. Okay. You turn the light on. Okay. Now, is the darkness in this flashlight here? No. See, that's how it is with God. Sin is like darkness, and God is like light. You can't mix them. You can't have them both in the same. So you kind of say, you're kind of crowding God out of your life and your heart when you've got sin. Okay, biblical examples. Joseph and the servant of Naaman's wife. Now remember Joseph's story? He was probably a mouthy teenager, a little bit, because he did, we don't know. It doesn't say, but his brothers definitely resented him. They sell him into slavery. Man, they hated him. And then he goes and he starts to make a decent life for himself. And he gets to be promoted to over this probably corporation. And Naaman's wife says, oh, I like this guy. And he gets falsely accused, thrown in jail. For how long? Years. Now, all those years in prison, unjust, innocent man. It caused you to turn real bitter, couldn't it? Yeah. What kept him going? His faith. He knew God's character. He knew who God was. He knew what God was like. And he knew that this was not of God. What happened to me was not of God. But what did he say about it later? What my brothers, yep.
What they did to him was where God was. So he told them, don't.
What they meant for evil, God used for good. Right. So, and let's see, who else? Joseph and the servant of Naaman's wife. That was another story. So there was this girl who was a servant. Naaman's not it was Nabal or something. The servant girl who was taken into captivity. And she was a servant to this lady. The lady got really sick. And she said, the prophet can help you. She could have said, hope you die, right? Right? But she helped. And even when you're mistreated as a prisoner and a slave, That's when the faith makes a difference. That's when you don't get sucked into that darkness. And using those examples with kids, this is why we tell them Bible stories and help them understand these are real people. This really happened. Okay. Chapter 4. Do we want to take a break? We'll just plow through. All right. We're into chapter 4. So that's chapter 4. You're in charge. By what authority is a parent in charge? It's God's authority, right? God's design for the family. That is how God set it up. When we mess with that, people get damaged, relationships get damaged, and children don't get the nurture they need. So now the key element of this is what kind of authority it is or is not. Do I exercise my authority or do I shrink back from my authority? So one of my mentors said sin is an exaggeration or diminishment of a gift of God. What does that mean? Well, that means, let's say I have the gift of discernment. And then I go around telling everybody, well, you're this and you're that and you're the other. And I overstep, and then I begin to step out of God. Did God tell me to go tell that person? Maybe I knew because of the gifting God had, but did God call me to say that? See, that's different. Or if I have the gift of discernment and I keep quiet, I am not using the gift that God entrusted me with. I'm not being a good steward of that gift. So children are a gift from God. So what does that mean? That means being a parent is a gift. It is a gift. They're a gift. And not just because the Bible, back in those days, they needed kids to, help with the crops and labor. They're a gift and a blessing. They're So this is where we kind of hit again those 4 types of authority that we talked about. Authoritative, which is parenting by teaching, modeling, having boundaries, and giving consequences. Neglectful is abandonment, workaholism, addiction, just being absent. Permissive, whatever keeps the peace. Give him whatever keeps the peace. And eventually the child runs the house. Authoritarian is overpowering, ruling by intimidation and dehumanization. Bullying. Now, have we all done some of these? Yes, we have. Yes, we have. But we see consistently trying to work out of the authoritative and to continually ourselves. Sorry about that. So remember that quote, rules without relationship leads to rebellion. The other part of this is that leads to children that are people pleasers because they relate out of fear, or they become targets of abusers because that's familiar. That's what I know. That's my role. Families become dysfunctional. Children assume roles that So I don't know if any of you guys had a chance to look through that PowerPoint that I sent you. Golden. So you looked at some of the sibling roles, and other members can take these roles, but scapegoat, the hero, the clown, the good child, or the invisible child. Now, some of these are influenced by personality, but also family function. What's going on in the family system? Okay, So Ephesians chapter 6:4, do not exasperate your fathers, do not exasperate your children. And I think that's addressing all of these dysfunctional ones. Because what happens to a kid, let's say a child doesn't have any boundaries and they get mad when somebody does give a boundary. What is that? What happens there? You know what I mean? No, you can't, you know, I've always been able to eat candy whenever I want. All of a sudden we say no. Ah! Right? But kids throw fits, want authority. They want boundaries. They want somebody to care enough to stand up and say, this stops you. And they don't know that that's not in their explicit thinking, but it's built in to feel secure, because there are fences around this that keep me from going too far and keep somebody from coming and hurting me. So this is where these roles can end up leading you. Okay. So authoritative. And how does a person become an authoritative parent? Doing the work, doing your own work, right? Doing your own spiritual work, doing your, letting God parent you, right?
You stop.
I hear somebody.
Oh,
Okay.
mama. I'm sorry.
No, we love it. It's a parent and child class. I want to see. You got a camera on. Oh, guys, look. Oh. Oh, she's smiling. I love it. Oh, she's so sweet. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Listen, if there's any place appropriate for it, it's here. That's awesome. Yeah, I had when I did group supervision with some of my students, sometimes they'd not have a sitter and they'd bring the baby in and I'm sorry, I couldn't get a sitter. We're a marriage and family therapy program. What do you think? Come on in. Now, when they get a little bit older and they're able to understand what the talk is, we probably should have that. Yes. Okay, so authority is a gift and a calling. The authority of being a parent is a gift and a calling. So we look at God's design for the family, and quoting Tripp, because he's got some good quotes too. Yeah. You have the authority to act on behalf of God, and you act at his command. That makes me think so much of John chapter 5, verse 9. Anyone got that? John chapter 5, verse 9. Verse 9. She's quicker with the pages than you guys are with your apps.
Oh, you could have jumped in.
Right.
And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath.
Wait, is that the one on
John
chapter 5, verse 9? Do I have the wrong verse? That's okay.
What do you want it to be? Let's see if we can-
What do I want it to be? It's a verse that says the father, I'm at work. The father shows the son what he is doing. He does so because he loves the son. The son does what the father shows him.
Yeah.
He obeys. So basically what it's about is that we have to remain in him and act on what the father has shown us.
15.
15. I gotta fix that.
And
Oh, I've got John 5:20.
I was in-
520?
Yeah, 5:20, for the Father loved us.
That's it.
That himself do it, and he will show him greater work than these that you may marvel.
That's it. He will show you greater things than these.
So it's 5:50. I'm sorry, 5:20 or
520.
okay.
Yes. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, the father shows. So what is that talking about? First of all, we don't do anything without the father showing us and calling us to it. And we do what the father has shown us to do, not what we want to do. And why does he do that? Because the father loves the son, right? And that's exactly what the modeling is. So when we as parents are acting, we want to act as the father has acted, to show our love to our children by teaching them, involving them in what we're doing, because we love them and we want them to do greater things still, right? This is what gets me, you know, when you've got a person that's say cooking. Now, when the stove was hot, the little ones were out, but to invite them in and make stuff with you. And I've heard a couple of cookbook authors talk about their grandma, their mom, so small, they're sitting on the counter like, here, stir this, you know, involving them in cooking something, and they become chefs. People, you know, a guy working on his car, and my husband did this. This is so sweet. He'd be doing something on the car, and he'd have one of the boys hand him the wrench, or he'd show him something in it. Not that he's a mechanic by any means, but you know, some things he did, and let me tell you, he's getting pretty good at fixing stuff. But yeah, and yeah, it takes longer to do that. It takes longer. Taught those boys how to change a tire, where's the battery, how do you know, teaching them those things. Yeah, it takes time. It takes time. Okay, hopefully I've got the right one here. Okay, Carly, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Bring them up with the discipline and instructions from the Lord. So in order to teach his ways, we ourselves must be under his instruction. This is something I say a lot. If you're not, get out. Now, he also talks about unholy anger. Here's something that's kind of an advantage because I'm teaching as a therapist. Anger is usually a secondary emotion with people. You guys know what that means? You've got the anger is the armor over something vulnerable underneath. It's protecting something. It's our defense against pain, vulnerable emotions, fear, shame, sadness. By the way, shame is at the heart of all domestic. That's not shameful at all. So it's righteous anger is the type of anger that is typically for something. And it is intended to motivate us to move and to act. So it is for justice, for protection of the innocents, for calling out falsehood, for defending the name of God. When we get angry, that's usually not what it's about. When you get angry at your child, it's, because they're loud or because I don't know if I mentioned it. So a couple times I've been with my grandbabies and the older one does this. Whoa, you got to dive in the way, but I didn't get angry. I'm just like, whoa, because I knew I could move pretty fast for an old lady. 'Cause it's going down right there. So, but there are times when they're fighting, you're like, just shut up. That's not a righteous anger. It's not righteous anger. That's one of those times where you go to your rooms, go to your separate corners. Man, when they shared a room. Whew. Yeah. So this is where our own self-awareness comes into play. I'm angry. Why am I angry? Okay, it's noisy. Yeah. Am I angry because they sassed me? What does that mean that they sassed me? Oh, mommy, that cake is ugly. Is that sassing me? No, I got my feelings hurt. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's probably ugly. I'm not good at that sort of thing. But you've got to be doing the work yourself in your prayer closet, in your time silent with God. You've got to be doing those things and constantly go, like I said, inviting God to the basement. So be aware if you're angry, ask yourself, okay, is this a righteous anger? Probably not. Maybe I better breathe a little bit. Okay. Angry you aren't getting what you want from your child is not of God. A power struggle is usually what this is about. And that's when we slip into the authoritarian, or we give up and we just, right? We just throw your hands up and say whatever. Remember, self-awareness isn't selfish. That's going to serve you well in those times. So like you were saying before, a break, take a break. Okay, you need to go to your room. I got to work on my right brain before I can get the left one engaged. So know that you've got the same processes they do. It's just that you've got more tools, hopefully in your toolkit. Discipline needs to come from a rational place. And again, we've talked about consequences should be disclosed before something happens. If you snatch the toy from your sister, the toy goes in a timeout. Or if you don't finish cleaning your room, then whatever, timeout, whatever you feel like. Or maybe you'll clean my room. Yeah, so try to think ahead and plan ahead, and this involves agreement between who's parenting. Now, what is, besides money, what's one of the next biggest reasons for divorce? Yeah, blended families, it is always one of, and there's not a lot of always in psychology. Here's an always for you. One of them's the bad guy and one of them's too soft. Always. So then you got to work with them to say, okay, well, what's happening here? Because I got this couple I'm working with, and he's like, they don't respect me. Okay, that's a trigger word for this guy. And so I'm having to dig in and, okay, so what does respect mean to you? What is that really, what's happening? Guy's dad wasn't around. He needed to be validated, Anyway, that's another discussion, but know yourself, know your reasons. And when you don't agree on a situation with the parent, between, a lot of times you got grandma's going to give them whatever they want. Try to chill on that. Yeah. Now, if
My grandkids come over, they ask, yes, baby. And the moms is standing there looking at me like, I'm sorry. So I'm working to reroute it. Ask your mama first, ask your daddy first. Because I've always.
Yeah.
Yes, you can have.
plan together, talk, Okay, we don't give them, you know, whatever, the diet thing, that's one of the big things that comes up. My grandkids know where the cookies are, let's just say that. But anyway, when you've got two people, you've got to work these things out before it happens with the children. You've got to come to an agreement ahead of time. And yeah, usually what is, you know, who's the better parent? Probably if we could combine them, they were somewhere in the middle, right? So, and that's just kind of human nature. That relational stuff, people will tend to go to one extreme or the other. There's a whole, yeah, that's a whole nother course. Okay, so discipline doesn't come from a random place. Again, ideally you disclose consequences before it happens. And that way you're not randomly reacting, which causes insecurity. That's one of those things. Kids need boundaries. They want to know what's expected. And so when something happens out of the blue, it throws a kid off. Now, if you're consistent and you mess up sometime, remember the still face video when she goes blank and then they start reacting, and he says at the end, it's all things we do with our kids, but the relationship gets restored. That's what holds it together. So, you know, if you mess up, and now this is one thing that Tripp does. He talks about confessing sin to his kids when he's overreacted, done something, and asking their forgiveness. We'll get into that a little bit. Okay, the spanking discussion. Again, if a suitable consequence is not available and age appropriate, do some real thinking. You can spank, but use sparingly. This is like the nuclear option, in my opinion. Again, it depends on the child too. You've got a big person overpowering and whacking a small person. I have no regrets whacking my son's legs if they tried to run out in traffic. Not a bit. No regrets there. But other things, maybe. Okay. Authority is a calling. Be confident in your calling. Sometimes we second guess ourselves. Yeah, we make mistakes, but my goodness. Do you remember the Mexican restaurant that, have you read that chapter yet, where in the Whole Brain Child, the 4-year-old goes and he stands by a post. Okay, now, if this was me, he walked away and the parents gave him choices. And so now if he was having a meltdown, we go out, we're out, right? But we kind of talked about too, the intentional tantrum or the loss of control, the actual being overwhelmed or flooded. Two different things. Now, if we're throwing a tantrum and it's a strategy, that's a different thing. Now they do that. They will do that. They work you. Spanking during a tantrum is not the solution. If they are overwhelmed, if they are flooded, because all that is they've lost control and they are, it can feel like they're going to die to them. It can feel that way, or the sadness can be so overwhelming. So wailing on them is not going to be helpful. So it just escalates the situation. So what we want to do is help them teach self-regulation. And sometimes they need to be held. Okay, this was too much. This is right. Like I said, when, I was told, ignore them. Well, what have I done? This is a person who is, yes, it's a 3-year-old and they're crying and they really are overwhelmed with their emotion, and I'm walking away. What am I teaching? When my love is conditional based on your behavior. Yeah, yeah. I'll love you when you act right. Do-overs, if I could just have do-overs. God has a lot of grace. He gives a lot of grace. Okay. Decision should be encouraged when you haven't planned a consequence ahead of time. But make sure your child knows when you get the final say. Try to have the upstairs, downstairs conversation when you can do it later, when everybody's calm. So, because you're telling me you have a choice in your behavior. No, we've lost it. So we don't have the upstairs thing going right now. So wait until a more opportune time. Oh, this is the one. Parenting defined. You're always on the job 24/7, even if you're on a trip somewhere and they're staying at grandma's, you're still on call. And this is something too that a lot of parents talk about, or a lot of things you read in magazines. And oh, well, it's got to be it. You don't have to have quantity time. You just, as long as it's quality time. That's hogwash. There's research to prove that's hogwash. Being with the child as much as possible and making a good time when you can. But sometimes just sitting in the same room, proximity, your presence makes a difference. So, so keep that in mind when you hear the, oh, quality time. Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but you got to have both. It's about me being there, even if I'm not playing a game or reading a book or whatever, even if I'm not engaged. Okay, clear objectives. This is parenting on purpose. Again, planning ahead. You're not flying by the seat of your pants. You have given thoughtful, prayerful consideration and goals in raising your child. Whoever thought of that? Having goals with your child. Well, they're going to get through first grade and the next goal is second grade. Yeah, but I'd love for my child to discover, what his gifts are. Or by the time we've been to grandma's 3 times, we're not going to be sassing grandma or whatever happens to be. Having goals and what kind of person is this? And you get a lot of this too, this attorney business where one child is more mature than the other and gets privileges that the other one doesn't. You can't parent them exactly the same way. They're different people and they will call you on it. Well, why does he get to do that? I'm older than him. Well, yeah, but he has proven his responsibility and we're going to work on that with you. Oh, yeah, they hate you. They hate you. But that is somewhere in there. I know it sounds crazy, but that is comforting to a child. When you say no and you hold on to it. Okay. So the plan and the expectation is given to the child before the reward, as well as the consequence of the behavior must be before the consequence of the behavior is communicated. So also to say, you know what, you're working towards this goal. I want you, say your child's working on a project, something like that. Talk about rewarding them. This is one of the things when I was teaching kinder music was catch a child being good. And that means, I love the way that you shared that with your sister. That was really kind. Because you're going to get more change and heart change by positive reinforcement rather than negative reinforcement. And this is something that with couples too, to try to get the other person's attention. If the relationship is solid, it only takes a few times of saying, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? But if they're not connecting, it takes a whole lot more. Trying to reach. And when you're saying 10 negative things and then one positive, what's gonna come through? It's gonna be the negative, right? And this is something they don't talk about in the book, but the brain actually defaults to the negative. I don't know if you knew that, if I've talked about that. No, it's the first time I've heard it. Okay. Great, I'll tell you something. Yeah, and of course, now your evolutionary theorists will say that it's a default to the negative is a survival response. And that's why that we do that, so that we're looking for danger, that we're, so that the saber-toothed tiger doesn't get us or whatever. It could be the sin nature too. I don't know. I've not really done much. I've not seen a lot of writing about that, but just know that the brain is going to automatically go to the negative. In order for the brain to go to the positive means it has to happen intentionally. It has to be learned. It has to be taught. It has to be consistent. So, and this is the point of being a director that he talks about in the text. A director, say a director of an orchestra. You've got the sheet music in front of you and you got all these people doing all these different things, but they've all got to do it at the same time. Boom. You've got to be clear with them. You also bring out the best of each section and what they're all doing. It's a positive, and you're teaching as you go. I don't know if any of y'all have ever been a part of any kind of music group or anything like that, but you spend way more time in rehearsal than performance, and that's a learning time. And if you're with a good director, oh man, you love it. You love it. They bring it alive for you. If you're with a bad director, what time is it? You learn things, but it's kind of like, okay, is this the authoritarian director? Is this the authoritative director? So kind of modeling that in your work with your child. Now, it's a sobering task, having some humility and admitting you are a human to your child. I commend Tripp for bringing that in. Confessing your own sin to your child and asking forgiveness. Now, here's the thing that a lot of the church believes, that forgiveness is a choice. It is a choice, but it's also a process. I choose to forgive. Does that mean I've done it? No. The Spirit of God has got to work something in me. Some people, it's just like people with addictions. You've had people say, I was gloriously delivered from alcoholism. I've never touched a drop in 35 years. And then you've got other people say, I've been struggling with this for 35 years. Does that mean God isn't working in that person? No, it just means that it's a process they're going through. And so you can forgive somebody immediately, but you're going to want to teach your child, okay, this is right now you're still angry with, your brother, or you're still angry about what your teacher said in class. And it's going to take you some time to be able to trust again. And pray for your teacher. Chip Ingram, one of my favorites. He's a pastor out in California. And I know Carly's heard this story before. Alicia may have heard it too. But I love this story because it just helped me understand it so well. So Chip was a pastor in a community, and then he got called out to this church in California. Well, one day he gets a call from one of the elders back at the old church, and he says, hey, I got some questions for you. And so he's like, okay, so he answers the questions and they hang up, and he thought, well, that was weird. He learns later he's on speakerphone and there's a table full of people, right? And of course, he was really, really ticked off about it. It really hurt him. And so what did he do? Started praying for him. And he prayed for him. And he prayed for God to help him forgive. And he knew that he had forgiven this guy when it was like over a year later. He heard something about something that happened to one of this guy's kids, some, award or something, and he was happy for him. That's forgiveness. Now, would that have happened in 6 months? Maybe, maybe not. But you've got to help your child say it takes time, and when we're not realistic about emotions with our kids, they're going to think something's wrong with them. Why can't I, because it's not automatic. The Spirit of God does it in you for sure, but he'll do it different ways. He does it different ways with different people. Okay. No place for anger. The righteous life that God desires is never the product of uncontrolled anger. And that quote comes from page 34. It also points the child to pleasing or placating you, not helping them internalize the gospel. So uncontrolled anger is going to get the child to try to keep themselves safe. And then they're not going to learn what God is like from that. He says that the benefits to your child, the relationship is strengthened. This child is open to correction. If it's a part of everyday life, it becomes normal. It's part of our family. The nurture and admonition of the Lord is modeled and becomes natural for a child to understand. It's not random. It's not out of anger. I understand the reasoning behind it. I know what to expect. It won't produce the adult who relates to God. If, how many times have I heard people say, I didn't know my father. Why would I care if God is my father? Or my father was a drunk that wailed on me at night. We can't, we actually literally are modeling God for them. So, and, we as ministers have to deal with that. And sometimes it means reparenting somebody. Let me tell you about the father I know. Let me help you with the pain you have. Discipline. Discipline is supposed to be corrective, not punitive, meaning vengeance, taking out your anger, getting back, payback. He's got this reasoning for the spanking. I'm like, okay, he talked about how sometimes he really hated doing it. I get that. But that's kind of the culture that he was in too. This isn't, this guy isn't, gosh, what's the publication date? I think it's like 05. Yeah, 05. And he, yeah. And this guy was older. This books have been around for quite a while. Discipline needs to be an expression of love. When you love enough to confront, when you love enough to do the work, to walk the difficult road that feels rocky and uphill. The easy road is the one where you're neglectful or permissive. The act of discipline should point to God's nature, his word, and his work in the world. Consequences related to the act needs correction. That needs correction does this. This is where I do my big thing about spanking. Okay, spanking isn't really related to what the child may have done. So that's why you've got to be really careful with it. Again, running out in the street is a big one. Okay, and yeah, I forgot about doing that with my kids. Nope, you don't hit, you don't bite. And that's like, okay, maybe that was wrong. I don't think so. I think that was related to what they were doing without biting back.
Do you happen to know like any kind of resource that has maybe know,
Mhm.
it's, something's different every single day.
Oh, yeah.
And like
Oh, yeah.
moving steps, so I'm wondering if there might be something that, some kind of resource where it has lists or maybe ideas for
Yeah.
different types of discipline for.
Well,
situations.
let me give that some thought. But one thing, as your kids get older, you can talk with them about, what do you think is fair if you break this rule? Now, the kid in the Mexican restaurant, he said 10 bites. He ate the whole thing.
Pretty good, it's nice. If I could get-
Yeah,
if I could get
yeah.
10 bites out of it, that'd be awesome.
But not that they have the final say, but a lot of times a child will think of a more harsh discipline than you would. And then you go, okay, maybe next time I'll think about that. Well, wait a minute, maybe, yeah. And you're like, okay, well, maybe it won't be, this number of hours without, whatever. Maybe it won't be, I don't know. You can adjust it. See, now it's getting late. I know, 7:30, it feels like it's 11. But yeah, let me think about, in fact, I'm old and I forget stuff. Can you email me and ask me about that?
Yeah.
Now, I could probably,
And
we-
probably ask them, I have, some of the similar
Uh-huh.
situations, like my son, he's talking back and things like that, where sassing back,
Mhm.
taking away things, we've done enough, we've done all these things.
mhm,
But I don't think too that a spanking is or anything like that is gonna get
Mhm.
to point instruction, but it's like negative. feedback.
okay.
But I don't know how to, like, what would be on an equal plane level.
When he's,
feedback.
when he's talking back, have you tried just slowing things down? What made you say that? Kind of doing some of the stuff she talks about here.
Work through it, some of the brain
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. Cause he's old enough, and then to say, okay, that's, and, you're teaching him about God too, right? And say, okay, this isn't the way God set up the family. You're frustrated. I want to know why. Now I'll tell you, my kids have never said, I hate you. And I always thought, if my kid ever said, I hate you, I would knock them. No. No, but I would say, you can't say that, because what I would think in my mind is that's disrespectful. But no, that's about me. What it is I hate you. Did they hate me? No. No, that's about their anger. That's about their confusion. And so talking to them about that, well, why would you say that? And that's, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying this is the best way. And of course, my daughter-in-law, she makes fun of me because I said, well, there's a research behind it. She always about the research. It's always about the research. Yeah, it is. But she's a good mom. But like with other things, that we discuss, I always say, well, the research says it's always about the research. Yeah. Plenty of research to show this stuff works. And we've looked at some of the we've looked at brain anatomy. We're understanding function about it. We're still in the stone ages of understanding the brain and how it works. And so it's amazing. Now, what happens to the toddler that is given everything they want and never hear the word no? What kind of person does that kid become? Yeah.
Entitled.
Entitled, yeah. Insecure, yeah. Yeah. He's, Tripp gets really radical with this, but in a way, he's talking about the death of the soul. The discipline of a child is a parent refusing to be a willing party to his child's death. I mean, that's hardcore. But what happens? That's what happens. Look at those people on the airplane. That's what, people drinking on the airplane, losing their minds, just right. And then you got some guy that's full of himself, and then there's Karen. Yeah. So there's the entitlement. It really, is a child like that happy that gets everything they want? No, they're not. Because it's idolatry, right? And they're just kind of moved by whatever their body tells them and whatever their, impulse has. And that makes for a very unhappy person and a person that doesn't get along with other people because they don't have a concept of other and of responsibility and all these other things. So, yeah, the 2-year-old that doesn't get disciplined becomes a monster. Okay, we are going to take a break here. Take 5 minutes, bio break, get a drink, use the restroom, whatever. Looks like I didn't finish the sentence down there. So just take a break and we'll finish up shortly.
I remember when candy like that used to be 50 cents.
We need to hit Dollar Tree before we come.
Before, right.
Even that might be $1.25.
I used to say
Chocolate is high.
I'm gonna, yeah, I gotta bring in some, see, I keep it at, I've got my office on Dixie and I keep it over there because my boss likes it and I have to keep him happy. But I need to bring some over here.
Chocolate and
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I love dark chocolate. I love dark chocolate. I love it.
Uh-huh.
And so my mom was like, "Oh, you're like water." But whenever there was adventures around, Professor was giving me different chocolates. It's like, "Hey, you get chocolate to calm me down."
Yeah, there's of course, your brain produces I don't know which hormone it is. It produces a hormone that kind of is a reward center in the brain. See, this is where if I had gotten a job with a neuropsychologist, that would have been awesome. But you've got the eating something will help you, will boost your, I don't know if it's serotonin, I don't know, boost one of those feel-good hormones. Then you've got the sugar, and then there's something in the chocolate that also, maybe the fat, I don't know. But yeah, it's all good.
And I wonder if any of it too is part of that association, like we talked about before, like
Yeah.
you've got that when you're doing good, you've got to treat. When you're
Oh,
doing
yeah. That's
good. It's linking.
that's behavior modification. Yeah.
Maybe it is, still in there.
Yeah. Okay, so we're jumping into the whole brain child. We're racing through the last 3 chapters. I think Kiara asked, and maybe a couple of y'all asked about when are we going to look at the developmental things. We'll look at those next week. And we're going to have our first presenters. These 2. Yeah.
I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, okay. So we're in chapter 4 of the whole brain child. And what we're diving into is processing memory is necessary in order for the brain to integrate an event and to be able to manage it. And so we have to kind of understand how memory works. Myth number 1, memory is a mental file cabinet. Now, you've heard me say files. I think that's but technically it's not exactly that. Just kind of helps people figure, okay, here's this little chunk of information and it needs to go over to this part or this part. But the brain actually works by association. And this is why when you're, for example, the practice of silence and solitude is a spiritual discipline. You're sitting, you're quiet, and you're trying to focus on God. And all of a sudden, some dishes in the sink. I better get to that. I'm like, wait, Lord, I'm with you. I'm here. And then you hear something. What? was that a bird that just hit the window? You know, just, and the thing is, you know, that'll lead to something else, and which leads to something else. And pretty soon you're miles down the road. What I like to tell my folks that are trying to work on the discipline of silence and solitude is God is the architect of the brain. He understands how it works. The purpose of silence and solitude is to be with and aware of the presence of God. And he's not disappointed that you got distracted, because he's already said, yeah, I know that goes there, that goes, I get it. He's not hurt by that. He understands that. It's the returning, it's the coming back. So anyway, the emotional context is what prioritizes or labels the file, so to speak, and determines its destination. So the higher the emotion, the less accessible it is in the memory. And when it becomes extreme, that's when it gets locked behind the baby gate that they talk about, and in the downstairs brain. And this is why trauma triggers. This is what trauma triggers are. So when you talk, think about a war veteran, and they hate the 4th of July. Why? Because the sound of the guns. It reminds them of people they lost. It reminds them of horrors, right? And when they haven't had the type of therapy to allow their higher brain functions to get at the lower stuff behind the baby gate, we would say, they're at the mercy of jumping every time, of even of being depressed, of being violent. The brain actually becomes shaped nearly permanently if you cannot get at integration. So memory number 2, memory is like a photocopy machine. Now there's an actress I've seen that she actually has what they consider a 100% photographic memory. She remembers everything she's ever exposed to. She can name, what happened to, when she got up on, December 14th of, 1984. She can remember that. Most of us don't. And it's kind of frightening, really, how inaccurate our memories are, and how that can be a life or death thing to somebody who's being accused of a crime. And yet that's what our court systems are built on. So just know that emotional context is everything. Details may remain, but some of them may be altered. You may, and this is where Carly was talking about brain plasticity. The memory can be altered if we're, let's just say, power is in the wrong hands. And that's where you get people confessing to crimes if they've been berated by the police. They may actually think, okay, yeah, I guess I did do that. It's, that's an extreme example, but if you hear something loud enough and long enough, you start to believe it. Okay, so here's explicit and implicit memory. So explicit memory is recall. It's what we actually are thinking about, what we're aware of, what we are observing, what I'm getting ready to say. Implicit memory involves automatic response. So think about it kind of like the background programming. We don't have to think about all the steps we take in driving a car. I think in the book they talk about changing a diaper. We don't have to think about all the steps because we've learned them. At one point we did have to. But once you've learned them, now those neurons are firing together. Now I can move on to something else and free up my explicit memory to something else. So we've learned things so well that the brain just automatically does it. Emotional context is powerful in the formation of implicit memory. This is why quiet introspection is so crucial to our spiritual growth. Because if, this is a big concern of mine, is, I mentioned this a little bit last week about kids being on the internet and social media and, watching shows and things changing back up, they don't get a chance to stop. It's just constant bombardment of stimulus coming in and no chance to sit back and reflect and to put some context and meaning. That's why we have to provide that space for kids. We've got to do it ourselves. How many times? Okay, let's talk phones. Let's talk phones. Do any of y'all get your reports on how many hours you were on your phone? Does it surprise you when that comes in? Not anymore. Okay, anybody got a confession of how much?
Mine's a lot.
Yeah. And when you put your phone down and leave it and walk away, what happens? Yeah. Your brain has been altered. That's what this is saying. Your brain has been altered. So you've now developed a need for that stimulation. And it actually has altered your brain to be dependent on that. Now imagine a developing brain exposed to that. That's scary. That's very scary. So we've got to make room for that with kids. Kids don't know how to pray, they don't know how to sit with God. They don't know how to, because how do we learn about our sin? Well, we see consequences of it, but conviction, if we're surrounding ourselves with all kinds of visual and auditory noise, we don't learn to listen. We don't learn to look. Where is God working in my life? Where am I being convicted? I've got to stop and listen. We've got to teach stillness. We've got to find stillness in ourselves, for ourselves. So still ourselves to join God in digging into our own spiritual life and our own relationship with Him. And having Him point out things to us that are outside our awareness. If you had something upsetting happen to you, let's just make it something simple. You open the closet and an ugly brown spider was there. And maybe you had the courage to take your shoe and smash it. But then you Googled and you find, oh, that was a brown recluse. Oh, crap. Now it's a different context when you open the closet. You're looking for, right? I mean, you have altered your brain by that experience. Your brain has been altered. So knowing that, and then, so you have to kind of untrain your brain not to jump. Okay, well, we've had Oklahoma Pest Control out. They're good. They've taken care of the spiders and all that. And so I've got to say, oh. And then every time I see a spider, do I freak out? So we have to kind of retrain our brain with that. And there's that upstairs, downstairs conversation. Okay, this works in addiction too. If we are seeking something and we keep filling it with that, the brain gets altered and then we don't know why. Why do I always look at my phone? Is it really going to be that important? That you know, the FOMO thing, fear of missing out. I panic when I leave the house if I forgot my phone. Well, of course, I've got clients I've got to be in touch with, but you know, what if something, what if? How the heck did we, what?
My mask.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying out about the mask. Do I have a mask in the car?
Uh-huh.
What did I do with the mask I took out? I mean, it's bad.
Yeah. So is that something that, you know, because are you worried about getting sick or making somebody else sick? There's a reason for that, you know, and that's founded in that's in reality because everybody knows somebody who's been sick or worse. So, yeah. Now, yeah, the mask thing, you know, and then we're stuck with listening to whatever they say. Oh, now you got to wear this mask. No, you don't need that mask. Okay.
That's anxiety.
That's kind of like when you're giving mixed messages to your child and they're like, okay, is it right to do this or not? See, we're just grown up kids is what we are. You just have to understand that. We're just overgrown kids. Okay. Remember when I talked about the hippocampus? This is a little more in depth about what the hippocampus does. It's the way they described it is the search engine of memory. And it works to integrate implicit and explicit memory. So there's that integration piece. Stress hormones reduce the function of the hippocampus, thus reducing the ability to overcome negative implicit memory. And I think they mentioned in the book too about the shrinking of the hippocampus under long-term stress. So, you know, this is serious stuff here. And you know, brain plasticity is important, but the hippocampus is a different part of the brain. You know, when we're talking about the higher functions, there's where most of the plasticity is. Now, if you have something happen to your brainstem that sends messages to your heart and lungs and your limbs, that's not an easy repair. That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about brain plasticity. But we'll get into that. So think about this. How do I manage a negative memory if I can't identify it? That's where we've got to slow down and actually reflect and ask ourselves questions and pray. When you're working with a child or with a parent, when they have an exaggerated response to something, a meltdown, and we've eliminated hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If we ruled out the physical stuff, and some of it's emotional, an exaggerated response is likely to be about something else rather than what's going on right in front of you, and it is locked into implicit memory. So when you're working with a kid, look at, okay, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Okay, what else? Whole brain strategy number 6, use the remote of the mind. This is actually a therapy method. Replaying memories. Now, what happened was, if you read it, the boy Eli had an accident with his friend with a knife, and then he got scared of sharp things. And the dad talks him through the story, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, all right, we'll skip ahead. We won't get to that scary part. Remember how the mom early on, Eo woo-woo? And she said, okay, yeah, and this happened, and this happened. She's helping fill in the blanks with that. But that's the same strategy. It's a similar strategy. Helping them to put a narrative together is engaging the higher functions of the brain. Okay, now trauma therapy uses calming techniques to try and stop the fear response, which hijacks the brain. So I think we talked a little bit about this last time. When the fight, flight, freeze kicks in, the pulse reaches a certain level, and then the adrenaline cortisol kicks in, and you're ready to try to survive. then your higher brain functions are not engaged. So what we do when we're working with someone in a trauma is to apply some things to they're called grounding techniques. And this is what they're actually talking about in the book here, grounding techniques. So body awareness, lay on your back and just kind of look at the room and see, what do you see? Noticing your breathing. I like to use visualization a lot with clients. And of course, EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. What it does is it actually does a right, left, either eye movement, auditory, or an actual vibrating tapper in each hand. And it goes right, left, right, left. Why does it work? We don't know. We don't know. Somehow though, it unlocks the baby gate and helps the higher brain functions to get at memories. Doesn't always work sometimes it takes a lot of repetition because it's going to be something, especially complex trauma, which is extended trauma over a long period of time. But that's called bilateral stimulation. And so this isn't the same right, left brain that we're talking about. It's like right body, left body. And somehow it unlocks the baby gate. We don't know how. It works amazingly. It's mind-blowing to me. It's a game changer for what I do. And of course, when I heard about it, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. It's real. Now have I talked to you about my missionary in Iraq? Okay. In a Middle Eastern country. I'm doing therapy with a young lady. She and her husband, they have a small child, and I have to see her over Zoom. And I've got this program where you can do the eye movement and watch the light go across the screen, and you have, that can work. I did a refresher course back in the spring last year, and they actually demonstrated where just doing your own self-tapping. So what happens? She goes to the grocery, a bomb goes off in the next street over. Right? We process that. And so she's talking, first we do the breathing, and we do a visualization and actually about a soothing place, a place that we feel really safe, and you breathe deeply and you just get yourself very calm. You take anything troubling and you just kind of set it aside. You actually imagine a container. And then we go into it. We processed that in one session. She was good the next day. Amazing stuff. And this is with this. I'm loving my tappers, that I use. Oh man, that's great. You can close your eyes. She's doing the tapping herself. Incredible. So what the brain wants to heal itself. We've got to help it do that. So when we've got kids dealing with something that's bigger than them, feelings that are bigger than they can handle, this is what we do. We help them with the grounding stuff to be calm, because we don't want them to get over that 90 beats per minute thing where they're back in fight, flight, freeze. So we keep the breathing going, we take it slow, and eventually the upstairs brain is able to get at that stuff. And I have had people, I kid you not, let me think, and they'll see colors, you think, that's crazy, that's just whacked out. I wouldn't have believed it either if I hadn't seen it myself. A lot of times what will happen is, because the brain is processing something, some images will come up. If I'm doing the tappers and their eyes are closed, they'll actually see a fog, a mist, or colors, and I'm going off, sorry. I could go all day on this, but the point of this is helping them to be calm so that the left brain can engage, and so that we can help the upstairs access the downstairs. And that's going to happen from a calm place, a safe place. And, one of the strategies that trauma therapy does is have the client write a recount of the event. And that sounds horrifying. And it can be horrifying, that actually write what happened. And they repeat doing that for a series of days. And it has proven to reduce their trauma response and help them. So we're engaging the higher functions of the brain to get at that event and aid in integration. So it's amazing. It is amazing. The brain is just so fast. I geek out over it. Okay, now this little diagram, I use this with couples. It's the negative interactional cycle. What it does, though, it kind of maps out what happens when we see something. The brain, so the cue, whatever it is, you know, something that they see or hear that triggers that survival response. It's instantaneous. So it's either, you know, danger, bad, run, fight, freeze. The body then responds in it's infinitesimal. The body then responds, the higher brain functions shut down, and then we're running or we're defending, whatever we've got to do. It doesn't change until the pulse starts to kind of even out and we start to attribute, what is this? And then that will behave based on that. I use this with couples because, you know, one person will say something and it hits the other person. They start yelling. Their body has already taken over fight, flight, freeze. This happens in relationships. It'll happen with your kids if they feel like you've left them, or, you know, they will freak out. And you're not going to get anything done. It's like we talked about. You got to talk to the right brain before you try to engage the left. And you've got to help the upstairs get access to the downstairs. So this is just kind of what happens in a split second. Okay, now what you can do, helping your child integrate implicit and explicit memory. So whole brain strategy, remember to remember, making recollection a part of your family's life. We have lost that. A lot of families have lost that. We don't sit around and tell the stories about, you know, we don't pull out the photo albums. Yes, there are those. There's still those around. Pull out the social media, but to talk about the history of your family, to remember parts of your day, to actually exercise the brain. That's what we're talking about here. Making recollection a part of your family's life. So implicit memories can be positive. We want to strengthen those. Recalling does that. It builds the child up, it strengthens them. And then, of course, we add in the context of God in the middle of all of this. God gives all good gifts. God is love. God is truth. And the Holy Spirit often works in the midst of the implicit. That's why we have to have those quiet times. You know, we talk about quiet time as a devotional. Well, if your quiet time is one where you read the devotional, you read the scripture, you do your ACT prayer, you know, adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and then you go about your day. Where was the conversation with God? Right? And we kind of think, okay, I'm not praying if I'm not doing something, if I'm not conveying something, but what if I'm just enjoying his presence? What if I'm just aware of him? And those are the ways that the Holy Spirit can actually bring things to us, good things and conviction of sin, and giving us insight in meaning to something that happened to us and how God worked through that, or something we're holding back from God. The silence is where it works. Okay, so help the child to be analytic by not attributing things to God that you shouldn't, that should not, because you know how you get some of these folks that go around and say, glory be, I found that parking spot. Thank you, Jesus. And I'm like, God didn't care about the parking spot. No, come on. Yes, all good gifts come from God. But that just happened, buddy. I mean, you could praise God and say, hey, thanks God, I'm glad that happened, but he's not, I don't think he's that involved. Yes, he knows the number of hairs on your head. But does he care if you lose one? Probably not. It's not going to change the course of history. So, we've got now a kid who's egocentric does something, especially a young child who hasn't fully gotten into the middle child development stage. They're going to think, I sneezed and a plate fell. Just happened that mom knocked it off, whatever. It caused that plate to fall, right? We've got to say, no, honey, I just bumped it. Same thing with God. Something good or bad happened. That was God. Well, we have you asked him, right? So helping them with the magical thinking. Now, Elsa isn't real. Do we need to make a point of telling the little girl in the video, Elsa's not real? No, let her enjoy that. That's part of her imagination, and that's part of her, that's the beauty of kids. We need that. But we kind of help them distinguish between pretend and reality, especially if they get off track and say, well, God did that. Well, we don't know. We don't know that for sure. God could do that, but let's look at that and really have a conversation around that. Okay. When you talk with a child, don't give them yes or no questions or one word answer questions. From the little comic in there, how was your day? Fine. Don't give them the opportunity for a yes or no. What kind of questions? We ask what? Open-ended questions. Yeah. Why do you think that happened? What did that person say today? I wonder why a frog does that. Just curious.
I like the one word, because I'm gonna try it with my granddaughter. I've already decided, when she come in, because I usually be like, did you have a good day at school? She's like, yes. And I'll be like, well, what happened? Oh, nothing. We just had a good day. I got to play. But I'm gonna try it when she get home. Well, when she comes and see me the next time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask her, in the book it said, make it like a game.
Yeah.
And to ask for her to tell me 3 things that happened in her day. 2 of them has to be the truth, and 1 of them I have to guess which one is the truth and which one is not.
Yes.
And so I'm gonna try that with her, because every time she come over my house after school, she'd be like, I'd be like, did you have a good day at school? What did you do today?
Yeah.
And she, oh, we just played. No, you didn't, because she's in 1st grade. So I know she does more than that. So now that I know that, now and how to build the conversation, like when the book was talking about when you get in the car, you say how you feel, or you say what you see, and engage in them. So I'm definitely gonna try those with her.
That could become a tradition for you guys. Oh, I gotta have my 3 things.
Yeah.
That could be really exciting and fun. Yeah. And then of course, when they get to be a teenager, 3 things. I gotta think of 3 things. And they're still gonna love it.
Yeah.
They won't let on, but they still love it. Yeah. Great. Okay. Look through family photos, pull up social media. Those memory things that come up on Facebook. I really like those, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was 4 years now that I've, and bringing up things like that, or just going through your photos on your social media site. Okay, kids, look at this. Do you want to see your dad when he was 12? Check this out. Look at this. oh my gosh, is that really what you wore? Yeah. And just, and talking about that, talking about things that you experience together. Be creative, do an art project or draw something to remember. And of course, the sand trays, I think I mentioned that. That's a fun thing to do. Just get a bunch of, dolls, figures, whatever, and, make a story and say, okay, I want you to use your dolls and have them do what we did on that airplane, or just, and then remember, we're exercising, right? We're actually building neural pathways and doing that. And we're just bonding. It's just fun. Okay, now I'm going to throw out a big word here. Helping their children think about their thinking. So, and they use the puzzle pieces to talk about, we integrate all these parts of self. Metacognition. Now you can go home and say, hey, I bet you don't know what metacognition is. Means thinking about your thinking. It's the big picture, the 1,000-foot view of, if I'm looking down at all the moving parts, right, in my thinking. Distinguishing between the feel and the am. This is a big one that we need to learn. This is, I am so mad. I feel really mad right now. I am sad. I feel sad. Because, we're kind of labeling ourselves. And a child is doing that. And by doing that, it's kind of like when was it you that was saying the negative, repeating negative things gets it, forms those pathways. That's kind of, we're naming ourselves and we're kind of painting ourselves into a corner with that. So we've got to help them be aware their emotions are not permanent. It's not going to hurt like this forever. Can you, depending on what it is, if a child is experiencing grief, don't rush them. But do let them know. I read an article. This woman wrote about her son was terminally ill. He was like 8 years old. And she said 3 things to say to a dying person. And the 3 things that she said was, you will not be alone. It's not going to hurt, and we'll be okay. Whoa. Right? Beautiful. And of course, here's the mom saying, we'll be okay. She can't imagine being okay. But you've got a child that's sensitive and thinks about those things. What's going to happen to my mom and dad when I'm not here? What's going to happen to my pets? I mean, she talked about, we're going to take care of your fish. We're going to, that's courage is what that is. So think about that. That's an extreme example, but it's an example of addressing things that they have been afraid of and maybe didn't even know to say those things. So help them to identify their emotions too, but help them to realize it's a state. And it's like you were saying, it could become a trait. I am sad, then I become sad. Then who am I when I'm not sad? If we just stay there, So helping them say, I am not my feelings. I have feelings. I am a lot of things. And that's that chart that they've got in the book. Show them that they have choices and resources to allow these choices. Yeah, I know you're scared, but you know what? I have seen you be really brave when, you had to have stitches, or we're here. You're not alone. I mean, what better thing can you say? You're not promising to fix anything, but you are definitely saying you're not alone. And that's the worst suffering, would be suffering alone. The power of focused attention. Yeah. If you have your books, go ahead and turn to page 99. Have that ready. Neuroplasticity. Top of the page there. The first paragraph. Somebody read that. Who's got that right there? It starts with, here's how it works.
Here's how it works. When we have a new experience or concentrate on something, say, or how we feel or a goal we like to achieve, that activates neural firing. In other words, neurons, which is our brain cells, spring into action. This neural firing leads to the production of proteins that enable new connections to be wired among the activated neurons. Remember, neurons that fire together wire together. This entire process, from neural activation to neural growth and strengthening connections, is neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Essentially, it means that the brain itself is plastic or changing.
That's good, right there. Thank you. Great stuff. So that explains the process, neuroplasticity. Now, this is a really extreme example, but I heard an interview with a musician. She actually had an accident that took out almost all of the right hemisphere. She survived. She couldn't play. She started working at it. She was a concert violinist, and the left brain started picking up right brain functions. And she worked and she worked and she worked, and she ended up performing again. Almost the whole right side gone. That's amazing is what that is. That's neuroplasticity. So we have amazing capacity. Our brain is an amazing, when the scripture says we are fearfully and wonderfully made, the brain is at the pinnacle of that. That is amazing. So, but also we got to look at it as we've got to be very careful in what we put into our brain, right? We have to train our brain, and we'll need to retrain our brain with the tools that we've explored here. Building the positive, being intentional about it, because if the brain defaults to the negative, then that means we don't want to build that road. We don't want those paths. So we've got to work at consistently, intentionally building the positive, and go back to when we read the scripture that says, speak about the Lord when you lay down, when you rise up, when you leave, when you come home. That's what that is. That's what that's describing. Isn't that amazing? God's the architect. God knew that before we ever knew. That's what he's talking about. Yes, that is it. I get chills thinking about it. Woo. Yeah, I'm a geek. So teaching self-awareness and brain awareness empowers children. That way, when we have a fear response to something, and a child doesn't know what the heck is happening, I'm breathing like this, and I'm shaking. This was a very scary thing that happened. Your body was trying to get you to where you could run away or, make yourself safe. You explain it at an age-appropriate level. So being aware of that ourselves, and know that even now, our brains are adapting to what we expose it to. Our brain structure changes with what we take in. So brain structure also changes in relationships and who we include in our world. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. This is so cool. Feelings come and go. Whole brain strategy. I'm not dumb. I just feel dumb right now. We would also want to take the time to identify the emotion. Okay, dumb is not an emotion. So then let's look at this. This is the feeling wheel. There's dozens of versions of this. That just shows one that's kind of simple. So notice in the center of the feeling wheel, you've got sad, mad, scared, joyful, powerful, peaceful. That's not my definition of all the primary emotions. The ones that I subscribe to are, let's see, we got anger, fear, disgust, shame, and joy. Yeah. But the point here is you have something like this and they're like, I don't know, I just feel dumb. Okay, so what do we do? Maybe are you mad about that? Yeah, I'm mad. Yeah, that really makes me mad. Point it out to them. Point it out to them. And then follow out if there's an even more accurate description of what they're feeling. Follow it out to the edge of the feelings wheel. These are big words. A lot of these are big words, so they wouldn't necessarily be all your, depends on the child, but stupid is on here. Do you feel sad? Well, maybe you feel ashamed. Maybe you're ashamed that you didn't do better on that test. So this is a great tool, and I use it with grown people. Not this one, but a version of this. I use it with grown people because they don't know. What are you feeling? I don't know. Okay, let's get the feeling wheel. I use it sometimes to torment my clients too. We're gonna get the feeling wheel. No, I'll figure it out. So, okay, sift. This is one where I'm going, okay, paying attention to what's going on inside. The whole brain strategy sift. What are the sensations in the body? What images are popping up? What feelings? What thoughts? You're helping the child to identify these. Have you ever heard of 4-H? It's a club. A lot of times I get younger ones. They don't. What's 4-H? But what we talk about is head, heart, hands. So it's thoughts, feelings, behavior, and then health. Well, that's the 4th H, but just you could actually help your child say, okay, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What did I do because of that? You can actually use those. SIFT is really good. I need to actually do better on asking about images that my clients have when they're having an emotional response. I probably need to do a bit more of that. See, I'm always learning. Okay, so body observations, breathing, butterflies, palm sweating, heart pounding. Why is this happening? Well, what just happened to you? It's no wonder that these things this is what you're feeling. And long term, it could cause them to have nightmares, to actually freeze, to just constantly be looking for danger, to overreact to things. And here's a big one. And this is what can be kind of disturbing, is when a child has something traumatic that happens to them, they will often reenact it with their play. Something they don't understand, and it's their way of trying to integrate. So if you see, say somebody got in a fight at school, and you see them banging their dolls together, they're trying to work through it. And this is where it gets difficult working with children that have been traumatized, because they do this with, that's part of a forensic interview is, what happened, show me. And we kind of get freaked out by them doing that, but it is actually their brain trying to heal itself. So they're working through it and they repeat this. They're just like the repeating of the songs. This is what does this mean? Why is this happening? I'm just going to try to understand it by doing this. So helping them to know that it's okay for these things to happen. It's okay for you to do this. Here's why you're doing this. Images. So an image that triggers them, that comes up around the experience. Maybe it's not just the event. Help them to identify something that maybe they hadn't thought of but really affected them. Say they witnessed a traffic accident. I will tell you, I was traumatized going by a traffic accident. I passed by and I saw a child with people around them and the shoe laying there. And I went home and I sobbed. And then I had a friend that worked in the police department. I'm like, what happened? What happened? And they couldn't find out. So yeah, I was just distraught. You know, it was just, so talking through that, what were the people's faces like that were looking at the little boy? They looked really sad. Yeah, that was really scary, probably to see that. Wonder what, you know, of course, and an EMS was there. And that was the other part. See, it comes back. Here's how the brain works. I'm doing an exact, so the details come back. Another thing was there were EMS people just standing there, not attending to the child. So I'm just giving you a life example of how the brain works with that. This was 20 years ago. And I remember that event. I remember looking, seeing there were people standing around like this, and the EMS people were not doing anything. And the shoe was there. My gosh. So if a child should see something like that, you got to be able to talk to them about it. You may be just as upset, and you tell them, oh, that really made me so sad too. I didn't understand what was happening, and, you know, process it together. Now, of course, you want to do it in such a way that the child isn't taking care of you, right? Because that's a whole nother syndrome, parentified child. They're not there to take care of you. They're not there to meet your emotional needs. You're there because you're called to parent. Okay, so images. Help them to talk through the event and sequence of events that come up. And don't rush past those. Take it slow with them. Do some grounding with them. Identify the emotion. Let them name it. Let them name it, because yes. Yeah. Okay. We're going to be done early. So yeah. I hope everybody's okay.
Yeah. It's not my normal schedule either.
Parenting. I'm recording this.
Okay.
So, and I'll put it up on the page.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Because I know you can't wait to hear my voice again.
Right. No, but I really enjoy it because it brings more info to what we've read. So it's helpful. It's
Yeah.
very helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah. Lord be with you. When we are working with the child, we let them name the emotion, and that gives them information to empower them in the future. That was really embarrassing, or that was so confusing, and it made me scared. Because if I am sad, then I'm going to need comfort. I'm going to be responsible for my emotions, and I'm going to look for comfort. Or maybe I just need to go cry, and that's okay. You do what you need to do. You're going to help them find what works for them. But having an emotional vocabulary will serve them for the rest of their lives to be able to name their emotions. So now, when you ask them, what do you feel? I was really, really scared. And this is something. What else? Well, I guess I was thinking that it was going to happen to me too. And that made me even more scared. And then I thought, I don't know, that's not right. That can't happen. Yeah, that's confusing. That can just leave you uncertain, and then you don't know where to go. See, and you're talking through it. What else? What else? And how many of you seen Disney's Inside Out? Okay, yeah, that's genius how they do that, and how something can be bittersweet at the end. That's great stuff. So working with your thoughts, making the story, the narrative, putting the pieces together to tell the story, and addressing self-talk, the I am statements. Maybe they pushed their little sister and the sister got hurt. I'm a terrible person. I'm so mean. No. Your emotions got a hold of you, and we got out of our upstairs brain into our downstairs brain. And your sister's going to be okay. It's just a skin knee. I'm so dumb. Okay, you feel dumb right now. You feel like you're mean. Maybe, so you talk through it so that they don't define themselves by that. Okay. Exercise, whole brain strategy 10, exercise mindsight, getting back to the hub. So this is that chart that they had where the calm centeredness, and then you've got all of these other parts surrounding that, and how one thing can take over. So we want them to be able to understand all of the resources they have at their disposal. And maybe the feelings and the thoughts are negative, and we're stuck there, and we can't remember that there's been a time that we had a similar experience and we were able to work it out. Then we talk about, so helping them not to fixate in one area, but to remind them you've got all of these things to draw from. And of course, over the whole hub, over the whole thing is God. We've got to include him there. See, this book doesn't include everything, but helping them with some calming techniques, then engage the other areas of the brain to help integration. Okay. Here's some of those strategies. I talked to you guys last week about the birthday cake. Breathe in, smell the birthday cake, blow out the candles. Visualizations. You can read a story. You can actually just talk them through. Let's just take a walk in the backyard in our minds. What happens when you go out the gate? Well, we've got those rocks. Yeah, what do those rocks look like? Are they rough? Are they smooth? Now look at the grass. What is the grass like? Right now it's kind of brown because it's winter. Yeah. And talk them through that. Just a walk through your backyard. Someplace familiar, someplace comfortable. Play some soft music. And then now these are a couple of, you've got the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. That was the one where she's talking to the daughter and she's having her notice things around the room. This is an actual technique name, and you don't just go, okay, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You stop, you go, okay, all right, I see the projector over there. Okay, and then I see the book on the table. I see the shine coming off the floor. And you name off 5. Okay, now what do you feel? Okay, well, I feel my sweater. I feel the cold of this surface. I feel my collar against my neck. We take them through all of these things slowly. And you can tell them, hey, this is something you can do yourself with an older kid. Then there's square breathing. They call it square because it's breathe in for 4, exhale for, some of them have, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. If that's one that's soothing for them. So these are things that you can bring in. Audible has these bedtime stories for adults. Maybe you can find something. And there's one about quilting. And the lady talks about quilting. I turned it on. I'm like, okay, this is distracting me. I had to turn it off. But you find something that they could listen to, or, there's just lots of ways to ground. And the goal of this is, I'm not caught up in the memory. I'm not caught up in the event. I am here. I am now. I'm in the moment. I am in this place. I am in a safe place. And my body, I'm aware of my body is in this safe place. One of the things that we do while we're processing with EMDR is we do a body scan. And every so often, we stop and say, okay, I want you to just notice your feet on the floor, especially we kind of let them feel it as raw as it may be. I had one client who was just, okay, we can stop. No, I want to go. I want to keep going. But to stop them and say, okay, notice your feet on the floor. You're here. You're in the present moment. Now, just move up to your ankles. Notice any sensations you have in your ankles. Now move up to your legs. And you go all the way up, scanning different parts of your body, all the way up to the top of the head. And it's very, very calming and grounding, So there's that. Socialization. This is the biggie. This is the one we've been waiting for, right? Remember the toddler's rules of possession? If I like it, it's mine. If it's in my hand, it's mine. If I can take it from you, it's mine. I had it a little while ago. It's still mine. If it's mine, it can never look like it's yours. Don't even leave it next to you. So now we've got to take into consideration the developmental stage of the child, right? And there's where we just start to introduce, okay, this, look at your sister. What is happening with her? What do you think she's feeling? She's crying. I don't know. Oh, okay, but there's tears. Why would somebody have tears? She's sad. Of course, you're probably holding on to sister. But just starting, and use little words. Actually, using simple words is a good idea with adults too. So this is a good place to start introducing this in nature also. For the little one, okay, that's not good. That's bad. Not your bad, but it's bad when somebody gets hurt, right? Socialization. So we're developing awareness of others. They call it the me-we connection. So the lessons on whole brain strategies, they include those questions. You should be asking the SIFT questions about the other person. What do you think they're feeling in their body? What do you notice there? What kind of pictures do you think they're seeing? What are they feeling? Well, they look really mad. So have them speculate on what's happening in the other person. You're raising their awareness of how their actions evoke these things in another person. So they're starting to put together, my action affects this person this way. So you're teaching them to be observant. And this is where you put God in. So what does God feel when you argue with your brother, or when you get angry when I take you off your tablet. Now you cold. What do you think happens with God? I guess he's mad. No, I don't know if he's mad, but he might be sad for you and for your sister. Because you're not happy right now, are you? No, I'm not happy. Okay. And then, well, what would make you happy? Well, if I had the toy. Okay, what else? You know, I mean, you got to do this, you know, in the moment. But remember, the brain is wired for connection. This is why we were created. Think back to the orphanage and failure to thrive. It's actually part of it. It's actually necessary for our survival. Connection keeps us alive. Yeah, people, why do you think that prisoners would prefer anything to solitary confinement? It's awful. It's awful.
Isolation.
We're not built for that. We're not built for that. Mirror neurons. How many of you have heard of these? Mirror neurons. Okay, these are the neurons in the brain that actually pick up and actually reflect what we're reading in the other person. We actually pick up emotions and experience them. So they use the example of like, yeah, absolutely, yes. You ever walk into a room and people are sitting there and you go, oh, something's up here. Those are your neurons picking up on very subtle cues, right? And I think our spirit does too. You can just start laughing when you hear somebody else laugh. If they've got a funny laugh, it makes you laugh. These are the mirror neurons. These are neurons that actually connect to the other person. So now I'm going to add some stuff in here. Along with the mirror neurons, bonding, a deeper sharing of the brain to another takes place. It's physical contact, extended togetherness, or attachment. Attachment is the emotional bond between people. This is Sue Johnson. She's my hero, besides Jesus. The bond from infancy establishes connection with the mother, strengthening chances of survival. Of course, she's a evolutionist. A theory of love would not have been accepted by the psychological community. What she's saying is, years ago, remember in our still face video, where he said, people thought that children couldn't have, or, couldn't respond to another person. That's pretty recent, guys. This is 20th century stuff, well into the 20th century, that people thought, well, let a kid cry it out. Yeah. So what she came to, what attachment is the theory of love that Sue Johnson talks about. Attachment theory is how we learn relationship. So let me see here. Oh, come back. Okay, so remember this one? And what happened there was very significant. I know, I'm not watching it. I'm not watching the video. But this is, and this you don't, if you latch onto this, great. But you can almost identify the different parenting styles here. Avoidant, ambivalent, that's inconsistent, disorganized, and then there's secure. So what you have is the parent or the caretaker in an avoidant attachment style. The parent is unresponsive and neglectful. And so the child learns, I have to take care of myself. I can't trust you. Now, this is from infancy. Ambivalent. So you have inconsistent care, unreliable. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. So the child says, if I were better, they would be there for me. So I don't trust myself. I trust you. And there's where you get this neediness. My parent can't leave my sight because they may not come back. Disorganized attachment is the mixed messages. So they come from the chaotic, abusive, neglectful background. So the child feels like I don't, if I were better, maybe this wouldn't be right. Maybe I must be defective, but then I can't trust you either. So there's no trust anywhere. And then you've got secure attachment. Look at the words: reliable, consistent. The child learns to trust themselves because they're treated as a human being and a valued individual. Intimacy, I can trust you. And with that, they are then better equipped to go out into the world and slay dragons or whatever it is they've got to do. They're more courageous, they're better risk takers, they're better decision makers. So this mom and baby, I think, had secure attachment, looked like it. Because now if this, and I've seen some videos of the different attachment styles of kids being observed. And you see it. You've got a child that mom brings him in, sets him down. Great, bye. There's no, and then when they come back, or you've got a mom that's trying to comfort a crying child and the child can't be comforted. Why is that? There's no trust. Sometimes you are good with me, sometimes you're not. I can't trust you. So that bond doesn't happen. And the brain actually structures itself to other. So the shaping that we've talked about in the trip and in this, the brain actually structures itself to the people we are in relationship with. So just as these other influences can cause the wiring to change, also our connections. Parents need to provide opportunities for positive connection within and outside the family. This is part of what they're talking about is, first we establish secure attachment from infancy, and then we're consistent and reliable throughout their child. Now we add in all of these other connections, and we learn that relationships can be good, and I can take risks and I can trust. And one of my favorite quotes is that love cannot be given or received from a defended state. So when we have walls up, a little bit of love might pass through, but we're never going to fully connect with that defense. Now, this is kind of one of my pet peeves, is shyness. So they talk about shyness as if it were something wrong. So I just want to tell you, as an introvert, we don't want to force kids to be extroverts if they're not. Now, if they're shy, maybe they need reassurance about meeting new people, that sort of thing. But kids go through phases in their development where they're afraid of strangers. It's actually part of the developmental pattern. It's somewhere between 25 and 30% of all the population are born introverts. Now, introvert and extrovert. Extrovert doesn't mean I'm always the life of the party, doesn't mean I'm, what it means is I recharge or I gain energy from my environment and my interactions. That's where I gain energy. That's what charges me up. Introverts need internal recharging. I need my downtime. I need to be away from things. I need quiet. I need to be able to, right? So kind of be sensitive to that with kids. Oh, they're shy. Maybe they're an introvert. There's nothing wrong with that. I had a mom bring her daughter in. This I got all kinds of stories, y'all. So, so the kid's in high school and she's miserable. And she said, and the mom says, she doesn't have very many friends. She doesn't go out. She doesn't this and that. I said, okay. So does she go out? Yeah, she goes out. Does she have friends? Yeah, just a couple. Okay. How are her grades? Grades are good. I don't see a problem here. Right? She wanted her to be an extrovert. She needs to have lots of friends. She's got to be out. No, there's nothing wrong with the kid. Nothing wrong. She had anxiety issues and she did actually not function well in the public school system with all the chaos. And so the daughter actually wanted to go to online school. And once I had met with the kid enough to know she's going to be okay, this isn't a reclusiveness, this isn't withdrawal. Like, okay, yeah, I think that might be good for you. She did great. And she had friends, just not, and so she, mom got upset when like a friend would call and say, hey, you want to come do this? No, I don't think so. Oh my gosh, she's not going with her friend. Yeah, she wants to get home. It's okay. So when I hear the word shyness tossed around, that triggers me because, I get overexposure to people and I need my alone time. And it's not a malfunction. It is just a difference. And it doesn't mean I can't be an extrovert. Here I stand before you all yakking for hours. I'll go home and I'll want to be by myself. But yeah, when I have too many sessions in a day, that's hard, especially if it's more than 2 couples. That's hard. Love what I do, but couples, man. Ooh. So now introverts do need connection, just like extroverts do. Doesn't mean we don't need those connections. So what we want to do is we can help a child that's introverted function in larger groups and situations. But we also need to honor their need for some kids to have alone time and be satisfied if they've just got 1 or 2 friends. Most of the time, they'll be deeper friends instead of, I got 100 friends and do they know me, right? And of course, there's nothing wrong with that either. That's just me being an anti-extrovert. I've got a friend who she is like the ultimate extrovert. And she wears me out, but she's awesome. Okay, so next, cultivate a yes state of mind, helping kids be receptive to relationships. So think about this. Secure attachment sets the stage for openness or receptiveness and the mindset that the authors encourage. So allowing and building secure attachment with your kids. Did they outgrow it? No. But developmentally, they'll need less and less of the proximity to you, that kind of thing. And eventually they'll have attachment elsewhere with their partners, with other people, but they're still going to be your kids. Hopefully you'll have a lifelong relationship. Prepare children for encounters with closed, reactive mindsets. So let them know that it's not all sunshine and puppies when we go to the sandbox. There are going to be some kids who don't have the ability to regulate. So we develop empathy towards those kids. Teach them to have boundaries though. No, they're not allowed to, push you down. You need to step away, and we're starting jujitsu next year. So one of my favorite stories about my son, that's jujitsu. Yes, I'm chasing along here. They teach you when they're responsibly teaching martial arts, it's for defense. And so my kids, both my boys had it from the time they were like 6 all the way up through high school. And so my son is in the hallway in high school, and this kid's just like shoves him into his locker, just instinctively wraps him, chucks him out, and lowers him to the floor. I'm like, yes. Okay, I know. But I mean, he didn't harm him. He could have let him drop, but he was responsible. Let me tell you something, that kid didn't mess with him anymore. And there were no bruises, no injuries, just, here you go, buddy. That's what you get. Yes, I'm proud. That was Jordan.
I was gonna ask if that.
That was Jordan. Yeah.
I wonder if that would be okay now.
Now you know something about Jordan. Yeah, that's a proud family. That's one of our family memories. When Jordan
Core family
set
memory.
that guy straight. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. But I mean, it was useful to him. I don't have to worry about my guys, you know, in those kinds of situations. But okay, so let them know that there are going to be other kids that don't have the same skills that you do, and we need to be patient. What does mom and dad do? What do they do when you get really upset? Well, you talk to me about, well, you could talk to your friend, or maybe just step away and find somebody that can help them. And maybe that's not going to be your best friend either. Because we know we are known by the company we keep, right? You know, and that's something else too. So be positive about other children that are struggling, but also help them to make good choices in who they are friends with. You have to, you know, limit your exposure to people that are unhealthy, because mirror neurons go both ways. Negative stuff comes your way and you're going to internalize that too. So just being aware of that. Okay. How many of y'all seen this version of this, the feelings of the face? Yeah. So connection through conflict. Teach kids to argue with a we in mind. Guess what? If you don't do it, how are they going to do it? If you get into scream fests with your partners or other members of your family, then you got to work on that and confess that to your kids. You know what? I yelled at your uncle the other day, and that was wrong. And here's how I should have done it. And here's how I want you to do it. Slow things down. Teach them the, how many of y'all have had active listening training? Teach them the active listening thing. I feel this, I need this. Telling the other person, and then being able to listen to the other person and say back to them, okay, you feel this and you need this. Is that right? Yes. Okay, now we understand one another. And guess what? By the time we've reached that, we're somewhat de-escalated, hopefully. You know, you talk to them about seeing with the other person's eyes, then you brainstorm solutions. Well, how can we work around this? How can we do this better? Okay, well, maybe we'll take turns with such and such, or you know what, maybe whatever, brainstorming. It's brainstorming. Funny thing you can do with kids too is let them brainstorm crazy things. Well, what we'll do is we'll have aliens come in and they'll zap the toy, and then there'll be two of them, and then we can both, okay, that's cool. That's an idea, you know. Now, you know, make a list. Make them crazy. You can do that. Do that with your kids too. And you go, okay, all right, now which of these might actually work? Let's look at those. Nonverbal communication. Teaching them to recognize other people's expressions and knowing that that's going to have an effect on you. If you see somebody angry, you're going to go, wait a minute. Okay, so they're angry about something, and that's kind of got you thinking about this too. Let's think about this. What do you made that person angry? Maybe you're going to ask them. Teachable moments. Using opportunities. Gosh, just even looking at you know, pictures in a book. Ask about what's happening in the story. Use the feeling wheel or this faces chart. There's tons of versions of this too. When you've got a little bitty person, have them point to it if they don't even have the words. Which one of those is you? What does that look like? You feel like that? You feel like that? No. You feel like that? Oh, that means you're hurt. That makes that hurts in your heart, doesn't it? Whatever. Okay. Now here's an example of using people in relationship. So you've talked about, look at your sister, they're crying, that sort of thing. So I'm on mission trip with my old church and teenagers. Yes. So the way this thing goes, I love it. What they do is they plan all year for this. They do fundraising, and they'll go and stay at one church and then send everybody out in all directions and go to all these other churches and neighborhoods, doing, repairs, sharing the gospel, doing backyard Bible clubs, all this kind of stuff. Well, and then, at night when you come back, you got the boys are in one end of the church and the girls are in the other. We got all these air mattresses going flat and stuff like that. So I can't remember where I was, but the youth pastor comes to get me and she says, we've got a problem. Okay. So I go, well, actually she sent somebody to get me. And I go, and so what had happened was you've got these two brothers, and this is they're fraternal twins, so they're not identical twins. So you got the one kid, he's tall, cool, and you got the other kid, he's Downs. Well, the brother with Downs had seen two of his friends arguing, and he put a rope around his neck. Well, okay, of course, the brother freaked out. And so they're standing out here in the parking lot, and this was a God thing, definitely a God thing. And so I'm just like, okay, what happened, buddy? What? And then he was saying they were being mad and they were yelling, and I didn't know what to do. And I saw this on TV. He wasn't trying to kill himself. And it's okay, no, that was so dangerous. That's, your friends are going to be okay, right? And then brother is just, like that. And then I'm like, okay, now look at your brother, see how scared he is. And they just went to each other's arms. I mean, and then what did I do? Well, then I say, okay, you take brother for a walk while he cools down and calms down and that. But that was just a God thing. But it was, look at your brother, see how scared he is. Will he ever do that with a rope again? No. He, hopefully that somebody will teach him some skills to deal with it being upset. His friends are mad at each other. But he saw how much his brother loved him and how scared he was. It was powerful. It was powerful. I felt honored to be a part of that. God worked in that way. But that's an example of, what are you doing? How is this affecting the other person? Look at them. What are they feeling? Strategy number 11, increase the family fun factor. Now we're getting to the stuff. The trip says, yeah, you should have some fun. But making home a place that your kids want to be. Enjoying each other and strengthening attachments, building good memories. So that's what we're talking about. Setting the stage and the environment for a safe home base, a place I want to be. Cook together, play together, hike together, read together, learn a sport together, be silly. Have a face making contest. Who can make the weirdest face? Worship together. take advantage. If your church has materials, take advantage of them. And, you know, if after you have some kind of, if you have a backyard Bible club, or you have some, if there's some crafts left over, or if there's some Bible teaching materials, take them home and use them. It's fun. It's really cool to do that. That was something I really loved about my home church, was they did the same Sunday school across the board, all the ages, from kids all the way up to adults, all studied the same passage of scripture. And so we'd encourage them to talk about it on the way home, talk about it, during the week. It was really, really cool. So that was us. Okay, I think that's it. Let me go back. Yep, we're done. And early again. Remember that on my evaluation. Don't say it's because I'll let you out early. No, so next week we'll I'm still going to cover the developmental stages and some of this stuff, but these guys are on deck. So
For our presentation, it's taking the chapter that we have and just kind of going over the material, but
yes. So you're integrating the two,
yeah.
right? You're bringing them together. Yeah.
How many resources did you say we have?
No, I don't think so. I'd have to look at the, no, that's on the, one of the papers, I think. Is it?
Yeah.
Not the presentation, but the paper.
I feel like
Yeah.
that might be.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've already got 2 in your hand.
Yeah, that's two in the Bible.
Or, there you go.
Look at you.
She's already got it worked out. Yeah. All right. Hey, Kiara, kiss that baby for us. Thanks for the joy that you shared.
Okay.
Have a good one. And
right.
you can email me your papers, whatever you need to do, drop them in Moodle, whatever. You got till Sunday midnight.
Oh, I have a question. Did we take a quiz today?
What's that?
Did we take a quiz today?
No, we're doing
Oh,
all
okay.
written stuff. There's no.
Okay.
We will have a final exam, but no weekly quizzes. It's going to be weekly writing assignments. It'll either be a reflection paper or one of the other papers that we've got on the syllabus. So no quizzes.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Very good. See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
What?